My wife handed me the phone and said, "Your dad's on the phone, something serious." And I'll never forget, he said, they found Molly dead outside of her car on a gravel road. She found somebody that she thought loved her unconditionally, but this guy was the ultimate con artist. If I could go back, I would have done everything in my power to keep her away from him.
He threw her out like a piece of garbage. Molly Watson believed she was getting married right up until the last day of her life. Melanie Addy believed she was living in a normal marriage with her husband, and these two lives were on a collision course. He was going to be forced to make a choice. I looked at the investigator and said, "This is crazy. Are you sure you have the right person?" I questioned everything from the beginning to the end. It was the darkest time of my life, and it was hard. It was very hard. I think he enjoyed it. I really do. I think he loved the game. Knowing everything that went on, I feel disgusted about it. I just don't think anybody would see, like, their dad that they grew up with and had loved would do something like this. Do you think you'll ever forgive your dad for what he's done? I don't know how to answer that.
The lights There's birthday girl.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Molly.
I miss her dearly. Molly's very special.
Make a wish, Molly. Make a wish. Well, the one's done. You're lucky to find the
Big 1-5.
And she had no idea how special she was to all of us. What I loved the most about Molly was the fact that she was just a genuine person. She didn't try to fake anything. She was herself at all times. It didn't matter who she was around or what she was doing. She always stayed true to herself. Molly was excellent at school. Her grades were always great. Molly went to school for computers, and then she wanted to go back for teaching. And she got that degree, and then she was trying to get her PhD in psychology. But she was too trusting in people. She was very naive and just loving, and people would take advantage of it.
I am what was formerly known as Asperger's syndrome. So, if I seem awkward in the videos, now you know why.
Being her brother, I felt like I needed to protect her. Molly had got this job at a state prison as a corrections officer. I didn't think it was a good fit for Molly because physically she was very, very short. You know, I figured mentally she could probably handle the job because Molly was always a good listener and she could give good advice without being biased on anything. And she just genuinely liked helping people. But me and my family had no idea how somebody with Molly's stature could control, some of these, and there's some violent inmates at this prison that, it was always a worry of ours. Something could happen. But then again, I'm biased because I am her brother, always protect her. I found out from my mom and dad that Molly started dating a coworker from the prison. Molly would tell me things like they were very much in love. He'd either gotten divorced or was in the process of getting a divorce. And that, once his divorce was final, they were going to be happy together. They dated for a long time, for 7 years. In 2018, when she told me they were going to get married, Molly was over the moon with him. Like, she was very excited. Molly proposed to him. And she was excited about it. She wanted to finally have the love of her life, spend the rest of her life with one person. You can definitely tell she's happy. I'm used to seeing her just like this. I still can't believe she's gone.
It was very remote. It was not a commonly traveled road. It was a wooded area. There were no street lamps that would make anything visible at night. A local Monroe County resident was passing through the area and discovered a body. She was shot with a gun point blank, a single gunshot wound to the back of her head. Law enforcement used databases to run her plates on her car. In addition, a search of the car revealed standard documentation that identified Molly Watson. A cast was taken of this tire impression at the crime scene and was submitted to the Highway Patrol lab. Law enforcement also observed something in the roadway. They stopped and they collected it. It turned out to be a white t-shirt. It was packaged as evidence in case it was relevant to this case because of its proximity to the crime scene. An initial search of Molly Watson's car revealed a marriage certificate in the passenger seat that did have the name Molly Watson on it and the name James Addy. They were supposed to be married in less than 48 hours. Once James Addy was identified as Molly Watson's fiance, they did go to his home to provide him with a death notification.
I woke up about 2 in the morning. I noticed police car lights in the driveway. And Jim actually met them at the door. They walked in, there was about 4 of them. And I was standing at the end of the hall and I said, "What's going on?" And everyone looked at me like they didn't know who I was or why I was there. One guy asked me, he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm his wife." I just remember them being very silent. I was just very confused. What is going on? What is happening here? I couldn't hear what was being said and kind of felt like I was being left out. So I moved closer. And that's when he looked at me and he said, "We're going to have you go to the living room." And he sat down and he said, "Well, we're just investigating. We found someone dead." And I thought, well, this is probably related to Jim's work. He was a correction officer. Maybe it's someone that he knows. or he worked with, and that's why they're here. That was my assumption. They asked me, do you know Molly Watson? And I said, no, I don't know who that is. And I was like, I still don't know what's going on. They didn't tell me what was happening until he was taken out of the house. They took him, put him in the truck, and then they told me who she was and how she was connected with my husband. They told me they were engaged and they were supposed to be married. And I looked at the investigator and said, this is crazy. Are you sure you have the right person? And he said, oh yes, we have the right person. He told me that they were planning to get married and that she had been killed. And they asked where he was that night, and I didn't have a good answer because I had gone to bed. I don't know what time he got home. I remember I had a glass of water and my hand was shaking. I remember being cold. I remember being shocked. I felt very numb. Like this is not my life.
It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and my wife came in and woke me up and handed me the phone and said, your dad's on the phone, something serious. And I'll never forget my dad. He said, Timmy, he says, the highway patrol just left the house. You could hear the sorrow in the voice. And he goes, they found Molly dead outside of her car on a gravel road. I remember my blood pressure shot up and just kind of being lightheaded. My first thought was maybe she was stressed out from the wedding and she committed suicide. And then I knew in my head, I'm like, that's not something she would do. Then the suspicions come about, hey, you think James may have had something to do with this? Because, 9 times out of 10, it's the husband or boyfriend that they first go talk to. The first time I ever met him face to face, he could never look you in the eye. You ever just met somebody that just automatically gives you bad vibes? I thought he was a con. He would drain her bank account because he made her pay for everything, trips to Florida, Mexico. I couldn't tell Molly any of my concerns about him because it would make her very upset. The only way to describe Molly's love was she had blinders on the whole time. The divorce story didn't add up to me because I know on Missouri CaseNet you can look up court cases of divorce. And when you looked up his name, none of them showed up. I told Molly to look up his divorce. She would have seen that it wasn't on there. But I honestly don't think she wanted to see what was in front of her. I think deep down, she didn't want to believe he was married.
This is a picture of my dad and I when I was in elementary school at a daddy-daughter date night thing that the school was holding. Back then, we were just living our lives, and those happy memories are true and genuine. He was a really good dad to me. We were really close. It was about 7 p.m. and my dad said that he was going to go visit a friend, and then he left. Mom had gone to bed. I remember my dad getting home. He walked into the living room where I was, and he asked me, "Hey, what are you still doing up?" And I said, just turning in homework. And then he walked out. Nothing really seemed out of the ordinary about my dad. He just seemed normal to me. After I'd finished my homework and stuff, I told him, "I'm going to bed." And he hugged me and kissed me on the forehead and said, "I love you." And that was the last time I saw my dad. I got out of bed and I noticed that my grandma and her husband were sitting there. Everybody was really quiet. And I remember Mom saying quietly, I don't think she wanted me to hear her say this, but I heard her say, "How am I going to tell her?" And then she walked up to me and said, "A woman has been murdered and Dad has been taken in for questioning." I didn't really know what to think, but I could see that on my mom's face something was very wrong. So I started crying. And she told me that everything's gonna be okay. I was still thinking, like, I don't know what's going on, but I guess I'll find out after prom. I didn't tell Emma about the affair. I just told her that someone has died and they were just doing an investigation. Emma asked, "What's going to happen?" And I said, "I don't know." And I said, "We just have to get your dress and get your shoes and make sure your hair's good." And so that's what we focused on that day. I was absolutely putting on a front. Yeah, I didn't know what was going to happen. We went to the high school and we took the pictures and saw Emma, and that was that night, yes. I'm still struggling to understand how you did it. Because it was Emma. And she deserved a good time. So this is our wedding, March 95. We look very happy, don't we? I mean, it wasn't a perfect marriage. We did not have a perfect marriage. I don't think most people do. But I thought that we both tried to make things work. I think, we learned to fight better as we got older. We learned to let things go as we got older. We did much more fighting at the beginning of our marriage than we did at the end. We mostly fought about money. He would use the credit cards, and I didn't know what the purchases were or what they were for. And he would give an explanation like, "Oh, I had to fix something on the cars or buy something for the house." And, I don't know car parts. I don't know, something very small could still be very expensive, and I wouldn't recognize that. So he could tell me something, and okay, all right, well, maybe that's right. I don't know. We all drove old cars, so maybe he was spending money on cars. I don't know. I just told myself, you know what? We have different spending habits. And, he wants more stuff than I do. I have different priorities. I wanted to save my money for traveling, and he wanted to buy stuff and things. And, you do learn to let things go. And I feel like he let things go for my sake. So we were really, I thought, very connected in that way, that we had been together for a long time and we were just working together to make it work. We were married 23 years. How did this happen? Why did this happen? He was home every night. If I missed something, I don't know what it was. We got along well. He was very charming and sweet and engaging. Jim had no tolerance for people that had affairs. He absolutely hated it. So I never would have thought him to have an affair. Never. I didn't believe it. I wanted to search the garage and the loft area because I knew that's where his things were, and I knew if there was any evidence that that's where it would be. I just kind of looked around the garage and saw a bunch of tools that didn't mean anything to me, so I walked upstairs to the loft. And I saw boxes with Molly Watson's name on them on the side. I opened the boxes. There were mostly just household stuff, kitchen stuff, just a lot of boxes of her things. From what I can piece together, she was planning to move into my house after they were married. Is really the only thing I can come up with. Then I found the locked chest. That's when I found the photo album of him at Disney World with Molly. He told me he was going to go to Florida for sniper training, specifically for his job. But he was not doing training in Florida. He was on a vacation with his girlfriend. I was very angry in that moment. I knew in an instant that everything was different. I knew it was not going back. There was no way. This was the end for him and for us. This is a marriage license issued for Molly Watson and James Addy. You do not have to prove that you're divorced to be issued a marriage license, but he did sign an under oath statement indicating that he was divorced and that he was eligible to be married. James Addy was living a double life, but Mr. Addy's position was that he was not the person that had killed Molly Watson. When law enforcement separated Mr. Addy from his wife, they interviewed him in his dining room. The alibi that James Addy had provided was that he was going to meet with a coworker. He left his home at 7 p.m. He got back home at 8:30 p.m. and that he had talked to Molly once he got back home. He did show investigators a 22-minute phone call between himself and Molly Watson. And that was the last phone call that she had with anyone. During that interview, at one point, he began sweating visibly. He stood up during the interview, opened an exterior window to the home, and placed a box fan in the window, blowing on him. Mr. Addy did tell law enforcement that he had gotten himself into something he should not have. In Mr. Addy's garage, they located a late model Mercury Sable.
They were able to observe the tires on that car, and they appeared consistent with the tire impression that they had seen at the crime scene. The tires were seized off of his car and submitted to the lab. A judge determined there was sufficient evidence to issue an arrest warrant. The investigation continued beyond his arrest.
Molly, I can honestly 100% say she was fully in love with him. I mean, just, smitten with love for him. And when Molly falls in love, she falls hard. I would try to bring up something's not adding up with this guy, and she didn't want to hear it. She wanted me at first to be in the wedding party as like a groomsman, and I flat out told her no. She found somebody that she thought loved her unconditionally. If I could go back, I would have done everything in my power to keep her away from him. I think that's the biggest regret I have. It was a big struggle for me, but it just killed me.
I questioned everything about my marriage from the beginning to the end. What was true, what wasn't true. One time, Jim got a phone call from a friend, and he said, well, no, of course I can't go. I'm married. When he hung up, I said, well, what was that about? And he said, oh, he wants me to go on a trip to Mexico with him, with another guy. So I said, well, why can't you go? Just because you're married doesn't mean you can't go. So I encouraged him to go. These are people that he said he worked with. I never would have expected him to run off on a vacation with his girlfriend. The following year, we planned a very similar trip, him and I, to Mexico. We stayed in the same area. He said, oh, we have to do this. I did this last time. It's just confusing and weird to me that he would take us both on the same trip. People have asked me, how did you not know? How could you not know for 7 years? And my answer is always the same. I wasn't supposed to know. He made it work for him, and I just wasn't supposed to know. I think he enjoyed it. I really do. I think he loved the game. I think he loved having two women. Absolutely. And I think it was just seeing what he could get away with.
After prom, I was still kind of thinking about what was going on because I still was in the dark about everything. And my friend said, I'm going to show you something and I don't think you're going to be very happy about it. And then she showed me the article that someone had shared on Facebook that she saw. And she showed me, and that's how I found out what had happened. That my dad was having an affair, and he killed the woman he was having an affair with. She gave me a hug and told me everything's gonna be okay. It was devastating to know that everything that had happened and that my world was completely flipped upside down. And I got in my car and I drove home. And I remember I walked into my house and I saw a photo album on the table. And on the front of the photo album had a picture I was really shocked to see that photo. I just couldn't believe it. I said, I know who this is. I've met her before. My friend and I were going to this Comic-Con thing, and I told my dad that I needed a costume made. And he said that he knew somebody who did that kind of thing. We drove out to her house. My dad introduced me to Molly Watson that day. There was nothing odd about it. She was really sweet. On the way back home, my dad told me, she seems to really like you. And I replied back, yeah, she's a really nice person. I really like her too. Having me meet his mistress did make me pretty angry. Knowing everything that went on, I feel disgusted about it.
Molly Watson was shot with the gun pressed to the back of her scalp. The bullet that was recovered during Molly Watson's autopsy was mangled and damaged, and so it was not able to be used to identify the murder weapon. It was determined that that t-shirt had gunshot residue on it. They circled areas where they tested positive for the presence of blood. And then there are some markings indicating where that DNA was consistent with Molly Watson's DNA. James Addy indicated he left his home at 7 p.m. that night to go meet with a coworker. However, the coworker indicated that he had not had any plans to meet with James Addy and that he and James Addy were not even close enough to have each other's cellular telephone numbers. And his daughter, Emma, said that she was up doing homework and that James Addy did not get home until 10 p.m. At that point in time, law enforcement was unable to account for James Addy's whereabouts between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m.
I had to identify this t-shirt to an investigator that came to the house. This is the t-shirt that I had made in my graphic design class, and there's no other shirt like it in the world. I made about 3 or 4 t-shirts, and I brought them home, and I gave them to my dad, and he was just going to use them as rags in the garage. And then it turns out one of those t-shirts had Molly's blood on it. I just don't think anybody would see, like, their dad that they grew up with and had loved would do something like this. The logical side of me knows that he's guilty, but the emotional side of me wants to believe that he's not.
James liked Molly, he liked Melanie, he liked his kids. His whole life was a lie. 2 days before the wedding, Molly came to me and she was talking about the wedding. She said, I don't know if it's going to be put off a little bit or not. And she said, well, his wife was in a car wreck. She's on life support. And they're going back and forth on pulling the plug on her. And then a couple of days later, she got a hold of me and said, hey, they pulled the plug on her, she passed away. This is the text between Molly and James the day of her murder. James, the funeral is tomorrow. I love you. Molly, I'm sorry, sweetness. I love you so, so much. James, my nerves are shot. I'm getting ready to head to the airport to pick people up for the funeral. The funeral they're discussing in this is Melanie's funeral. And it turns out she's very much alive. This guy was the ultimate con artist, that's for sure. Since he wasn't smart to keep the con going. I think she definitely started to put 2 and 2 together. I think if Molly had found out the truth about James, I think she would have ended the relationship knowing he was married. Well, that may have been what she had confronted Mom that night.
You can only lie your way out of so many situations. And this was just as big a lie as could be. I'm obviously not dead. I think I deserve some answers. What are you thinking? What were you thinking? I don't know if I was just the enemy and he thought he deserved someone else, or she flattered his ego. Was I so bad that I deserved this? I think I just went in angry, and I'm not sure he could have said anything to make me less angry at that moment, but I wanted to know everything. It was very hard. It was very hard to know what to do and how to feel, because I felt bad for him. I felt very bad for him. But if he was willing to do away with her to fix the problem, then would he have done that to me? Why did he think this would work? He didn't have any clear answers. I just asked him, why would he do this to us? He admitted he'd had an affair, and he was sorry. He apologized, and he said, I didn't know we had such a perfect life. He said he did not kill her. I didn't really expect him to tell me the truth. I think at that point I had already known that he was guilty. I said, well, I think they're going to get you for this.
The lab analysis indicated that the right rear tire of James Addy's car had left the impression that was cast. That placed James Addy's car at the crime scene. As well, there were 2 witnesses who had been held in the Monroe County Jail at the time that Mr. Addy was placed in jail. Mr. Addy indicated to them that he had put someone face down in a ditch. There was a mountain of evidence tying this crime to James Addy. He was the one with motive, means, and opportunity. James Addy was living this double life with Melanie and Molly. Molly Watson believed she was getting married right up until the last day of her life. Melanie Addy believed she was living in a normal marriage with her husband, and these 2 lives were on a collision course. He was going to be forced to make a choice. He didn't choose Molly Watson. He threw her out like a piece of garbage which was consistent with how Molly Watson's body was found abandoned and just left on a dirty, dusty road in Monroe County, Missouri.
Testifying against my dad was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. I knew that if I looked at him while I was on the stand, I was gonna cry. So after I got off the stand, I looked at him. He was crying. My dad and I were so close. And I had never thought that he would do something like that to risk leaving his family. He already had a family at home, so I don't know why he would need anything else. I thought Dad had loved all of us. I thought he loved the life he had. I don't know why he would risk it all. I never confronted him with that. I never spoke to him again after he was arrested.
Do you think you'll ever forgive your dad for what he's done?
I don't know how to answer that one.
After Jim was gone, I had to get the divorce. It was the darkest time of my life, and it was hard. It was very hard. There are no winners here. Everything around it is just so sad. We're just not those same people anymore. Kind of made me redefine who I am and who I want to be. I'm not this man's wife anymore. And I think that was an identity for me. And that was a big thing, to redefine myself as a single woman, because I never thought I would be. I think I've come a long way.
When Molly died, it set my mom over the edge mentally. And she was actually diagnosed with severe psychological trauma from Molly's murder. And my dad, he ended up passing away of a heart attack. And then my mom totally lost the will to live. Her last couple of weeks, she didn't eat, she didn't drink. I can't describe watching somebody that you love so much just, dying in front of you. It was an awful feeling. I think both of my parents would be alive today if Molly wasn't murdered. I feel like James Addy took my entire family away from me. I squarely blame him for it. James had 10 different ways to end a relationship. He chose to murder her.
Hi everybody, it's Molly. Today I am just kind of doing a general vlog. I figured I would just kind of give a little bit of background on me so you kind of get to know me.
I love this video, Molly. Anybody that sees it, that is my sister. That is her 100%. I've actually gone to bed before with it playing on the TV just so I can hear her voice. And it's a big comfort to me.
I have 2 degrees in psychology, a bachelor's and a master's. I'm working on a second master's in counseling. And I am very much a huge geek.
It gives me what I miss about her most. These videos are more precious than a lot of stuff. But this video in particular is just Molly.
So I'll catch you guys later, and bye!
During the 1990s in Bridgeport, Connecticut, 4 women were brutalized, violated, and strangled to death.
This is a serial killer. He's leaving a signature on how he commits these homicides.
In a violent city where many murders went unsolved, the deaths were not immediately linked.
They were dead-end cases. They had no suspects. They had no leads.
10 years later, cold case detectives reran the DNA evidence, and they got a hit.
Then the computer made the link and notified Bridgeport PD that there is a hit and it belongs to this guy down in Georgia.
Drifter Emmanuel Webb used his charisma to conceal dark and destructive desires.
Webb is the smiling face of evil. Always warm, never threatening, and yet something utterly horrifying is going on behind that facade.
He wanted to kill. He had opportunities to kill, and he didn't miss one of them.
Although his crimes went unpunished for years, a dedicated task force would eventually unmask Emmanuel Webb as one of the world's most evil killers. In 2006, 40-year-old drifter Emmanuel Webb thought he'd committed the perfect murders.
These serial offenders, the narcissism, they think they're smarter than everybody else. And each murder they get away with proves it to them. They begin to think they're infallible.
In the 1990s, forensic science was limited, but it was only a matter of time before it caught up with Webb.
DNA wasn't refined, so you had this sample that was saved with the hopes of, at some point, technology would catch up, and it did.
18 years after Webb killed his first victim, the man the papers called the East End Killer would face justice for what he'd done.
He'll never get out. That's a death sentence for him.
This killer's story begins on the 9th of April 1966 in Vidalia, Georgia.
Emmanuel Webb's father, who was a disabled veteran, died when he was about 3 years old, and he lived with his mother.
Webb grew up with his mother and older sister in Mount Vernon. In 1984, Webb graduated from high school, and he and his sister traveled north.
He left Georgia to go and live with his sister in Bridgeport, in Connecticut.
He worked as a security guard in Fairfield, which is an adjacent town to Bridgeport. Lived on the east side. The east end of Bridgeport was, I would call, a working class area of the city. People who lived there all their lives.
Emmanuel Webb was a hard-working man on the surface, with quite a charismatic manner, very attractive to women. He meets a girl called JD.
He met her when she was kind of lost, and he inserted himself into that situation and ingratiated himself, and they started a relationship.
In 1988, he and 22-year-old JD had a baby. But by this time, Webb had developed a serious drug habit.
There was a second child that came along. He was a problematic father. He didn't pay any attention really to his partner or his children. He was going on binges. He'd go missing for days.
Emmanuel Webb's behavior was not unusual in 1990s Bridgeport. It was a city in sharp decline.
In the 1990s, Bridgeport was suffering a crack cocaine epidemic, and all that brings with organized crime and gangs and the addiction and the need to get the money to pay for that addiction and the poverty that was around. That's going to have a massive impact.
It was also just a very violent city. We had high murder rates back then in our cities, mostly from either gang activity or drug activity.
In Bridgeport from 1990 to 1993, there were 287 homicides.
Most of the murders could be linked to gangs or drugs, but there were a handful which did not fit into this pattern.
In April 1990, the fire brigade were called to a car fire in the East End.
And I was one of the first patrol officers that responded. Once the car fire was extinguished, there was a body that was found there.
The body belonged to 39-year-old Sharon Cunningham.
She was found in the car with terrible burns to her face and to her body. She was partially clothed. She was nude from the waist down.
But this was no tragic accident.
She had been ligature strangled with her pantyhose, and then there was also secondary injuries, beating, blunt force trauma to the head.
There was no doubt that the death was an unnatural one.
It was mysterious as to why the car had been burned and how she ended up where she ended up.
Sharon did not drive herself there, did not undress herself. There was an attacker who planned this and who took every step of the way to try and wipe out the evidence of their crime.
Detectives suspected that Sharon had been sexually assaulted.
There was DNA found vaginally.
They found spermatozoa in her, and that was saved and preserved.
The evidence was bagged and recorded, but the investigators had no idea who Sharon's killer was.
A lot of the background work that was done at the time, knew where she worked, knew who she frequented, but there was really no suspect.
2 years later, on the 28th of March 1992, police were called to another suspected homicide, just a few blocks from where Sharon's body had been found.
A 29-year-old woman called Minnie Sutton is found dead in her apartment.
Family lady, worked, people knew her, would go to the clubs every once in a while.
She has been brutally attacked. Her 3-year-old son is also found in the apartment, but he, thankfully, is unharmed.
What they discover is Minnie partially clothed, with her lower torso naked and no underwear on. She also has suffered stab wounds to her neck, to her torso, and to her stomach area.
A post-mortem revealed crack cocaine to be present in Minnie's system.
The cause of death was multiple stab wounds combined with strangulation. This is a person who died being choked to death while bleeding to death. This is not an attack that could have been survived by anyone.
Interviews with Minnie's family and friends quickly led police to a suspect.
Her boyfriend's brother had assaulted Minnie a couple of weeks before, and 2 days before the homicide, she'd woken up and he was kind of threatening her with a knife. This is the complex issue of dealing with these homicide cases. You can develop good-looking suspects right off the go, only to wash them out, down the line. And that's what occurred here. They were able to rule him out.
The only lead police had was evidence recovered from the crime scene.
The police investigators discovered 2 smoked cigarette butts near the body of Minnie, and they collect them and they preserve them.
In the early 1990s, DNA profiling in criminal investigations was relatively new.
DNA technology, as far as getting evidence processed and identifying a suspect, isn't as refined as it is now.
Another murder case went cold. A year later, in April 1993, again in the East End of Bridgeport, the body of Elizabeth Gandy was discovered.
Elizabeth was last seen April 16th, and then her body was found on the 19th. It was in an abandoned building. It was kind of a crack house.
When her body was found, she was badly beaten.
Elizabeth's body is found with her breast exposed. This is suggestive of a sexual element to the case.
Elizabeth was a 34-year-old mother of 2 who'd looked forward to welcoming her first grandchild into the world.
One of her daughters when the attack took place, was in hospital about to give birth to a son, but Elizabeth Gandy never got to see her grandson.
The cause of death is determined as blunt force injuries and strangulation. She is killed being hit and also being choked to death.
The crime scene was a bloody one, and there were clear signs that a struggle had taken place.
There's blood spatter on the walls, up to about 6 foot.
Unfortunately, that building was an abandoned building, so a lot of contamination, a lot of people's DNAs could potentially be present.
There was blood and tissue under her fingernails that was preserved, again, in hopes of DNA analysis would catch up and allow that analysis to come with a match.
Witnesses were interviewed, evidence bagged, but no link was made between the murders and no suspects identified. No one knew that a violent sexual predator was targeting the women of Bridgeport. In June 1993, just 10 weeks after Elizabeth Gandy's death, Bridgeport PD were called to the home of another young woman in the city's East End.
Sheila Etheridge, once again, person that had her own home, worked, social life, family.
She has been missing for a few days.
She'd had a birthday celebration on June 25th. The last known contact with her was a telephone call on the morning of June 26th. Her body was found a couple of days later in her apartment.
Her father and a friend break into Sheila's apartment by climbing through a window, only to discover, tragically, Sheila's body already decomposed.
There are signs of strangulation, including hemorrhages, bruising in the neck. But the decomposition took away the degree of confidence required to definitively call the manner of death a homicide.
A search of the property found evidence that 29-year-old Sheila had not been alone.
There was a beer can found in the house.
A used condom that appeared to contain semen was discovered.
Police inquiries revealed Sheila to be a recreational drug user. They also learned she had a boyfriend.
She was in a relationship with somebody. Nobody really knew his name. They kind of were speculating who it was.
One of the names in the mix was local man Emmanuel Webb. Police quickly ruled him out of their inquiries.
They talked to him, but he is plausible, amenable, helpful, and charming.
By August 1993, 27-year-old Webb's relationship with his partner JD was over, and he returned to his home state of Georgia. He was living the life of a single man.
He was very attractive to women. I think several of the women who knew him said how extraordinarily attractive and charming he was.
By the summer of 1994, Webb was dating 37-year-old Evelyn Charity. On the 10th of July, Evelyn's colleagues were concerned when she failed to turn up for work.
A friend checked on her and found the body in the victim's apartment on her bed.
She's laying in bed on her side. There's a stab wound to the neck and there's evidence of strangulation.
She was dressed in a nightgown and like a housecoat, no underwear on, and the housecoat and nightgown were pushed up, exposing the vaginal area.
Evelyn had been sexually assaulted and murdered. When police attended, they found a chaotic crime scene.
The scene is crawling with neighbors and friends who are there, so potential DNA and evidence could have been cross-contaminated. They had to quickly isolate the relevant from the irrelevant and protect the important from the unimportant.
The killer had stolen Evelyn's car and a gun. When they began looking into her lifestyle and associates, Emmanuel Webb's name quickly came up as someone Evelyn may have been romantically involved with.
The police track down Evelyn's car and they trace it to Emmanuel Webb. When Webb is confronted with the fact that he has Evelyn Charity's car and that she's been found dead, he does something quite astonishing.
He tried to talk his way out of it with, well, yeah, I was there and I had sex with her, but it was consensual. She died accidentally, and then I tried to stage it to look like a homicide and robbery.
The explanation did not match up with the evidence from Evelyn's autopsy. Bones in Evelyn's neck were broken and she'd been stabbed.
There are many accidental deaths that happen during sex, but you don't break your own hyoid bone by participating in wild sex, and you certainly don't bleed to death through a stab wound.
Facing a murder charge, Webb's legal team offered a plea bargain, which prosecutors accepted.
Webb was allowed to plead involuntary manslaughter. That's not an uncommon thing to plea deal, and it does save the cost of a trial, and it also saves all the uncertainty around whether you're going to get a conviction or not.
In 1995, he's given 20 years. As a result of his conviction in Georgia, Webb's DNA is taken for the first time.
At the time, there was not a national register, but Emmanuel Webb's DNA was stored on the database of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. In late 2001, after serving 6 years of his sentence, Webb was paroled. The 35-year-old was free, and he was on the move once again.
Emmanuel Webb is out of jail. In fact, he's not only out of jail in Georgia, he's gone back to Connecticut.
In the mid-1990s, Bridgeport's police commander set up a homicide task force to look at dozens of unsolved murders from earlier in the decade.
They were charged with probably looking at 207 open cases. And the cases were defined by evidence that was collected that hadn't been analyzed.
They started to do a linkage analysis on the cases. Are these cases related?
There were 4 unsolved murders where the female victim had been strangled. All had taken place within the same square mile. The cold case team wondered if they were looking at the work of a serial killer.
It is very often the case with serial offenders, and especially with serial killers, that they operate in what you might call a comfort zone. If you're going to kill somebody, you don't necessarily want to do it in a place you've never been to before.
So in this case, obviously they were all in Bridgeport, but more importantly, they were all on the east side, all within really almost blocks of one another to a large degree. So they're isolated sort of geographically.
It was an area that was seeing an increase in drug-related activity, gang-related activity, homicides.
Though detectives suspected a so-called East End killer was responsible for a cluster of women's murders, the investigation in the mid-1990s quickly hit a dead end.
The cases were going nowhere. They had no suspects. They had no leads.
In 2000, cold case detectives began taking a fresh look at the evidence.
There was a lot of forensic evidence at these crime scenes. The kind of forensic evidence that now a criminal would avoid leaving. So we had things like cigarette butts and nail scrapings and semen.
There was evidence that was collected that was never sent up to the lab because there was really nothing you could do with it. Some of the DNA is difficult to extract. They sat in evidence for almost 10 years until technology caught up.
The cold case detectives, they collect this evidence and they send it for DNA profiling.
It was a slow process, but when they finally tested in 2005, the State Forensic Lab's findings were worth the wait. Evidence collected from 4 of the East End crime scenes held forensic traces that came from just one person's DNA profile.
So the likelihood of it being the same killer is considerable. The police in Connecticut have all the DNA. All they're missing is the killer.
The profile was run through the US National Database, which since 1998 had contained the DNA profile of many newly convicted serious offenders.
They put the DNA into the CODIS system, into the database, which was obviously a very good thing to do, but nothing. There were no hits at all.
It was a frustrating turn of events. Bridgeport detectives had unearthed a serial killer, but they had no idea who he was or how to find him. In early 2006, the Bridgeport PD Cold Case Unit investigating the suspected East End serial killer finally struck gold.
They get a DNA match.
There was a hit, and it dealt with a death in Vidalia, Georgia, and identified an offender, and that DNA from the homicide in Georgia matched the unknown DNA profiles on the cases in Bridgeport.
The offender had been jailed for the manslaughter of 37-year-old Evelyn Charity in Vidalia in July 1994. 39-year-old Emmanuel Webb. In late 2005, Webb had once again been on the wrong side of the law in his home state of Georgia.
And in November that year, he's arrested on drug possession and also parole violation because he's left the state in which he was supposed to be serving his parole. And so the police arrest him.
Investigators in Georgia took a DNA sample from Webb, which now revealed him to be the #1 suspect for the East End murders in Connecticut.
So now we have a DNA hit, and then we have a suspect that's incarcerated for a similar type of crime.
Hearing the details of Evelyn Charity's death, Bridgeport detectives realized they were looking at a near identical homicide to the ones they were investigating.
It had both behavioral and forensic linkages.
There was too much of a commonality there.
Bridgeport detectives visited Webb to verify his DNA link to their cases.
So then they had to get a warrant together to get a confirmatory DNA sample. They swab them, get it, and once that came back as positive identification of him, then the case moves forward.
With Emmanuel Webb safely locked up for the time being for his parole violation in Georgia, Bridgeport detectives had time to learn everything they could about their suspect.
Who the hell is this guy, and could he have killed these women? And it didn't take long to realize he literally had lived in Bridgeport the whole time that this happened.
He had ties to Georgia, had family in Connecticut. He was transient, he would go back to Georgia, come back.
He lived in Bridgeport on the east side, many times within blocks of where these homicides occurred. All these women lived on the east side of Bridgeport. They all knew one another. They all were using crack.
By charting Webb's network of friends, the places he frequented, and the lifestyle he lived, investigators were able to establish a strong likelihood he knew all of the victims.
When our officers and detectives went out there to do the canvassing and get background information, everybody knew who he was.
There were witnesses who'd seen Webb socializing with some of his victims.
There was a street there called Stratford Avenue, which had a number of clubs on it and bars. People used to go in there. So they saw him. They knew who he was. Hey, you know what? We saw him with some of these females.
Though the DNA evidence was compelling, prosecutors feared it would not be enough to secure a conviction.
In order to actually produce a viable case in the courtroom, you need much more.
They reached out to the FBI. And the Federal Bureau of Investigation has a behavior analysis unit. It's called BAU.
FBI agent Greg McCrary was assigned to the case.
I was contacted by the state attorney in Connecticut about taking a look at a series of cases that they believed were linked. How could his DNA be at every crime scene and him not be involved?
Agent McCrary was asked if he could identify features of the murders that linked them to one killer. He looked at what he called backcloth.
Backcloth is the overall context in which the cases occur. We're talking about geography, we're talking about victimology, and by that we're talking about socioeconomic issues, commonalities among the victims as well. When we looked at the method and manner of death, strangulation was involved.
Strangulation is a relatively unusual method of homicide.
I did a statistical analysis. In the homicides in Bridgeport from 1990 to 1993, there were 287 homicides. Of those, 7 involved strangulation. 3 of those dealt with male victims. So now we're down to 4 females that were killed by strangulation. One of those cases was solved.
The 4 victims were Sharon Cunningham, Minnie Sutton, Elizabeth Gandy, and Sheila Etheridge.
Strangulation is a very close and up personal way to kill somebody. When men kill each other, they rarely strangle each other. When men kill women, it's a bit more common that they will use strangulation.
Another pattern McCrary identified was that each of the women had suffered additional violence.
There were other injuries inflicted on the victims that were unnecessary to cause death. We had these secondary injuries in many cases that involve blunt force trauma to the head or knife wounds and incise wounds and lacerations.
Minnie Sutton was the one that was really mutilated. There were stab wounds there, not fatal stab wounds, but slashings.
She was stabbed in the neck, the left-hand side, the forehead.
From a behavioral aspect, looking at what an offender does that he doesn't have to do is very compelling because it goes to that individual perpetrator and no one else.
Another hallmark of the killer was that each victim had likely been sexually assaulted.
The clothes of the victims had been moved to expose sexual parts of their bodies. So that's quite an obvious sign to us that there's a sexual motivation here.
Semen was recovered from the body of Elizabeth and from a condom near to Sheila. 11 years later, DNA from that condom helped link Emmanuel Webb definitively to the scene.
And that is a key piece of evidence that was identified, collected, properly documented, stored, and eventually it was analyzed. And that gave us DNA material of the person who used that condom. It was a magnificent piece of police work.
Along with the physical links and commonalities between the crime scenes, detectives discovered Webb's behavioral patterns were a fit for the crimes.
The one thing there that we did learn from individuals that had relationships with him, he was rough, right? It was domestic violence, but it was sexual in nature. It was a pattern of behavior that for him, that was his gratification. You know, it was sexual force, dominance, and violence.
This knowledge suggested a possible motivation for the murders.
He either covered up his sexual acts by trying to kill them, or he knew he was going to kill them and he wanted to have sex with them anyway.
Having found links between the deaths in Bridgeport, prosecutors next needed to link them with the one Webb had already been convicted of: the manslaughter in Vidalia of Evelyn Charity.
The victim in Georgia died of ligature strangulation, and there was cocaine in that victim, and these other victims had cocaine in their system as well. They were known to be doing crack cocaine. And there was injuries secondary to the strangulation that were unnecessary in the Georgia case and the other ones.
The forensics and the profiling made for a strong case, but leaving no stone unturned, the team revisited the files to do some old-fashioned detective work.
In cold case homicides, you're always looking for new evidence.
It's one thing to make an arrest, but then to get a conviction, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You want to make sure that you've got all the information there. These detectives were phenomenal detectives. They were very, very self-motivated. They looked at it, and they had to go back. You're talking going back 10 years and, finding witnesses, going back, talking to family members.
Among those investigators tracked down were people who'd known 29-year-old Sheila Etheridge, who'd been found murdered in June 1993. They finally confirmed that her mystery boyfriend was none other than Emmanuel Webb.
When they started doing their background work, two-edged sword here, right? Hey, yes, he was in a relationship where it kind of got fleshed out. Their family said, hey, they knew it was a rough relationship, it was sexual in nature, and then he was abusive towards her.
Investigators revisited the file of Elizabeth Gandy, whose body had been found in an abandoned building. The walls were spattered with blood, not all of which was hers, suggesting her attacker may have been injured himself.
The other lead that we suggest in those cases is going to the local emergency rooms or primary care centers and ask if anyone has come in with a laceration wound to be stitched up or fixed up.
Detectives dug deep to find out whether Webb had attended a medical facility around the time of Elizabeth's murder.
Remarkably, it was discovered that Webb had gone to hospital the following day.
He was being treated at Bridgeport Hospital for cuts, scrapes, abrasions that were indicative of a struggle.
And that turned out to be his blood at the crime scene, on the victim's clothing and on the wall. So when you begin to put all of this together, I thought it made a very compelling case.
In June 2006, Emmanuel Webb, already incarcerated in Georgia, was charged by Bridgeport police officers with the April 1993 murder of Elizabeth Gandy. Convinced he was responsible for 3 more deaths, prosecutors prepared their case, but Webb was not going down without a fight. On the 14th of February 2007, 40-year-old Emmanuel Webb was extradited to Connecticut from Georgia. He arrived with his ankles and wrists in shackles.
They were able to get 4 warrants for his arrest for 4 of the homicides, and he came up to Bridgeport to stand trial while he was still incarcerated in Georgia.
As Webb waited in a Connecticut prison for his trial to begin, there was months of legal wrangling over how the 4 murders would be tried.
The prosecution wanted to basically have one trial for all 4 cases.
Agent Greg McCrary's analysis connecting the crime scenes was central to their argument.
Early April 2008, I was contacted by the prosecutor in Bridgeport. They wanted to try these cases together, and they asked if I would be willing to render an opinion.
The aim was to show that the 4 murders had enough in common to be tried in a single court case.
They're tying it together, showing the signature events and why there's a commonality there, and it's not a coincidence and it has to be from the same individual.
The only people believing they shouldn't be tried together was Webb and his defense attorneys.
They wanted each case to be done individually because there was different evidence. And they also felt that if you did them all at once, it would be easier for a jury to just convict them on all of them.
I ended up testifying on May 1st in a hearing before a judge in Connecticut on the cases. And I was linking actually the Georgia case with 4 cases in Bridgeport. At the end of the day, the judge excluded one of the Bridgeport cases.
Webb would not be tried for the June 1993 murder of Sheila Etheridge.
Sheila exhibited enough decomposition to render the pathologist unable to determine the cause and manner of death with scientific precision and accuracy. So although we found hemorrhages to her left eye, although we found bruising to her neck, we couldn't really determine that this was due to a homicide.
Webb's DNA was at the crime scene, on the beer can and in the condom, but neither could be deemed incriminating.
He was in a relationship with her, so it wouldn't be unusual to find a beer can empty there. They couldn't really tie him there as closely and as tightly as they did the other 3 cases.
The judge erred on the side, I guess, of caution and took that one out, but kept the other 3 in, which was still a win.
It was a devastating blow for Sheila Etheridge's loved ones. 42-year-old Emmanuel Webb would be tried for the murders of Minnie Sutton, Sharon Cunningham, and Elizabeth Gandy. But at the last minute, as detectives and prosecutors finessed their arguments ready for trial, Emmanuel Webb changed his plea.
They were ready to go to trial, but Webb pled out. He didn't want to go to trial because the evidence then was overwhelming.
On the 22nd of May 2008, Emmanuel Webb cuts a plea deal with the Connecticut authorities.
Webb pled no contest to the 3 murders. A month later, he was sentenced. The state had not proven the aggravating factors, such as rape or kidnap, needed to make the murders death penalty cases.
He was sentenced to 60 years in prison, 20 to life on each of the 3 cases, as I understand it, to run consecutively, one after the other.
So basically it's a life sentence.
First, however, he would return to Georgia to serve out his time for the parole violation there. His sentence at Hancock State Prison ended in July 2014.
As of then, he was turned over to Connecticut Corrections to serve the 3 sentences for those homicides.
When Webb's sentence was handed down in a Bridgeport court on the 25th of June 2008, there was applause from his victims' loved ones. It had taken 18 years to get them justice, and the dedication of a committed team of detectives.
It was tireless work. You know, and for me, as a supervisor, as a commander of that unit, you know, you no more pride than to have distinguished detectives do what they did and bring these cases to a successful culmination.
Webb was a dangerous predator who hid in plain sight.
Emmanuel Webb was a man who was actually the devil, hiding around the corner or in the coffee shop, and you never suspected him. He remains, for me, literally one of the most dangerous killers in America, because he's shown no remorse, no reticence, no regret, no conscience. That makes him a very evil man indeed.
It took many years to bring Webb to justice, but for those involved, it was worth the wait.
I've had cases that have taken over 20 years to solve, but it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as you can solve the case, it's the perseverance. It's getting justice for the victims and holding people accountable for their behavior.
You'd always get calls from family members, you know, on the anniversary dates of the homicide or their birthdays. It's not going to change anything, but you're bringing them a little bit of closure, and they get justice. You know, that's what you try to do. You try to bring justice to the family and to the victim themselves.
Emmanuel Webb was known as a man who liked to party and a man who could charm his way into women's lives. But he abused their trust, murdering his victims in terrible acts of sexually motivated violence. After escaping justice for years, he was finally unmasked as one of the world's most evil killers.
Oh, you guys are killing me. That picture makes me feel anger and sadness. It makes me angry at John. It makes me hate him. He was my brother. He was the only person I had left. And family's supposed to be there for family. But how could you? How could you be there for that? God, I can't even imagine it. I can't even imagine it. Doesn't even look like John. Doesn't look like the John I remember. He could have had a really good life. Somewhere along the way, he took a wrong turn. The damage that he has done is unrepairable. There's no going back. You can't bring any of these victims back. And I'm so glad my parents weren't around to see him there, to see that picture. I don't know how he was able to keep people fooled for so long by his stories. He always seemed to have an excuse that seemed to be plausible. John had this evilness to him that I didn't see. I think I was too close to him. I love my brother. And I hate him. This is a picture of John and I. I think I was probably about 5. And he was probably about 8. We grew up in Augusta, Michigan, very small town. John and I were very close. I loved him. I looked up to him. And I wanted to do what he was doing. Playing baseball, playing kickball, playing hide and seek. We did it all together. Oh, I'd love to go back to that time. John and I had a fantastic childhood. It was a normal childhood. Somewhere along the way, something happened with John. He let evil in. My father, he was police chief, he was fire chief, he was mayor of Augusta. He did everything. We knew everybody, and everybody knew who we were. John, at a young age, got himself into trouble quite a bit with his mouth. When John was in high school, he had a friend. They would both run up to the girls' locker room, and he would open up the door and just yell, you know, I need a maxi pad. And they just thought that was so funny. When they came home and they told me about it, of course I laughed. I just shook my head. I'm like, John, you're going to get into trouble for that. And he always was like, shrug it off, be like, I'm just having fun. Well, my parents always wanted to make sure that we always were truthful. John would get in trouble because he didn't tell the truth. John would tell stories, lies about his homework in school. John always had an excuse or story for what he did. And I don't think I ever remember him taking responsibility. And when we weren't truthful and we lied, my father would take action with that.
Come on now, John, confess.
My dad would take him in his bedroom, shut the door, and then ask him to tell the truth. And when he didn't, then he would get a spanking. And till he was able to then tell the truth. When John got a spanking, that bothered me. I would cry. I think it hurt me worse than it did him. I don't remember John crying. John was never really too emotional growing up. I could ever remember. John and I used to play games at night after my mom and dad went to bed. John and I had bedrooms that were right next to one another. When mom and dad thought we were in bed, we used to throw things at each other in our rooms. It was mainly stuffed animals, and we'd just throw them back and forth and just laugh. We did it all the time. One night, I threw a stuffed animal into his room, and he didn't throw it back. So I threw something else. He didn't throw it back. So I grabbed something else and I threw it. This time John came back, but he walked right into my room. He just said, "If you throw anything else, I'm going to kill you." It didn't even sound like John. He was very dark. That was a feeling I got. Very, very dark and just unlike John. It did scare me a little bit. And I just went and got in bed. He turned around and went in his bedroom. And that was it. I just figured he was just in a bad mood that night. Could have been a million things. I do not believe that we even play that game anymore. And, you don't think that your brother is mean or evil. You don't think that at all. Looking back, after what I know now and what John has done, maybe that was a flag and I didn't notice. His threat that night could have been more than just talk. Growing up, John and I both had a paper route when we were kids. He did one side of town and I did the other side of town. One day I was on my paper route and I was delivering a paper to this house that had a big, beautiful dog. When I walked up to the porch, here come that big dog. The dog jumped on me, put me down to the ground. Then I remember the people that lived there coming out and pulling the dog off me. I was crying when I went home. Mom and Dad were calming me. We talked about how the dog had attacked me. I had a few bite marks on me, but there was no blood or anything like that. But it scared me. I know John was there, but I don't remember John ever saying anything at that time or even acting upset over the situation. When I went to do my paper out the next day, the dog was nowhere to be found. And every day the dog was not there. I went to school with some people that lived in the area, and they had told me that the people had found their dog and it had been shot. The dog had been shot out in the woods. At that time, I didn't think very much of it. People in Augusta, everybody was big hunters. I didn't put John with this until later on. I would not have thought John had done that. Maybe I didn't want to believe. After John graduated high school, he went into the Navy. He was over in Japan for 2 years. After John returned home, John told me all kinds of stories of things that happened where he was stationed. He told us a story about how he met this woman at a bar. They went back to his hotel room to have sex. He had said that she had went into the restroom, and when she came out and walked over to John and he turned around, and it ended up being a man.
So what did you do?
John had said that he had totally freaked out and beat the hell out of him. He's such a storyteller that he told it in a way where all the guys in the room found it very funny. I didn't really think it was that funny. It was always hard to tell when John was serious or he was exaggerating. I didn't know whether to believe it or not. So it was the first time that I've heard John ever admit to any type of violence. He was over in Japan for 2 years, so a lot of things could have happened to him. And it makes me wonder if that's the time he started having different types of sexual desires. John got together with one of my friends from high school. She got pregnant and they got married. His life was good. Their marriage seemed to be okay. There was problems, but from what I seen from the outside, John was a doting husband.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
One day, I remember sitting in my apartment or just watching the news. I remember hearing John's name on the news. They had said that John White had been arrested for stabbing Teresa Morris numerous times. She survived the attack. I immediately just freaked out, I guess is the best words to say. I couldn't believe it. John's wife called me on the phone. She told me that John and Teresa were downstairs smoking pot, and next thing she knew that John was running up the stairs screaming that he had killed her. He had killed her and to call the police. But I just needed to go see John. When I seen John for the first time, he had had cuts on his hands by his thumbs. I asked him how he got those cuts on him, and I remember him saying because she came at him with a knife.
Tried to attack me.
They were doing drugs, and then Teresa turned on him and came at him with a knife because she wanted his drugs. The way the cuts were on his hands, it was like he was trying to stop somebody from stabbing him. John had said that he had blacked out, and when he woke up, she was laying on the floor bleeding. I can't see any logic in it, so I don't understand why or how he could possibly do that and why he would do it on purpose. I didn't believe that John had done this intentionally. According to Teresa's testimony, his whole demeanor changed. I remember her saying that it was like he was not there. His eyes were like black, and then that's when she got scared. Looking back now, I believe that Teresa told the truth. There's just got to be more to that story, because you just don't go downstairs to stab somebody. That would make him the sick person, evil person that he was. My dad and the lawyer decided to go for a temporary insanity plea. John only served 2 years for his crime in prison and got out on good behavior. With John, there was always a reason why it happened, and it was never his fault. He wasn't the one to start things. He wasn't remorseful about it. I never heard him say that he was sorry for what had happened. I look back on it now and Josh never got out. 2 women might be still alive if they wouldn't let him out. When he was in prison for stabbing Teresa, he had written a book about his life. John sent me a copy of his book. Some of the things that he wrote in the book caught me off guard. In that book, he speaks about our paper routes. I got to the part where he had talked about shooting a dog because it had attacked me. I was shocked. I didn't expect that at all. He kind of explained how he got down on his belly and had his shotgun and had waited for that dog to come out in the backfield, and he shot him because the dog had bitten me, hurt me, scared me to death. Didn't have a clue at any point in time. He never mentioned it. He never came back to me and said, that dog will never bother you again. I definitely got a sense of he did it because the dog hurt me. I felt that John's sense of right and wrong were definitely off, but I obviously didn't know everything about my brother. So this is a picture of John and his big truck that he drove. He was very proud of that truck. Back then, I thought it was very cool that he was an over-the-road trucker. I thought, how cool would that be just to go and just cruise around the United States? Well, he used to tell me about all the great things he's seen and been through, and then he also talked about prostitutes in the truck stops. He called them lot lizards. They would come up and talk to all the truckers and talk to him. He never said anything about having sex with them. But according to his friends, he told them that he had taken prostitutes into his truck, and after they had sex, he dumped them in the dumpster. He did not actually say that he had ever killed any of them. Just when he was done, he referenced throwing them into the dumpster. I thought for sure when I first heard it that his friends were just making things up. Or John was again telling one of his stories. What if he had a prostitute in this truck? What if he killed somebody in this truck and dumped her in a dumpster? Seeing where things went to, maybe he did. I think the life that John led on the road was his evil side, his evil life, his other side. Later on down the road, I was into watching crime shows, and there was a particular one where there was prostitutes that were missing on this one stretch of highway. So I do wonder if John was involved in any of that. I didn't think much about it at the time. I didn't think about it much until Vicky. About this time, him and his wife were not getting along. They were having problems. He took a job at a laundry place that did linens for hospitals and such. And this is where he met Vicky Sue Wall. He told me that he had fallen in love with her. He had an affair. He also told me that he would meet Vicky in the parking lot and she would get in his truck and they would go and have sex.
I think I'm in love.
I don't want to hear about this.
I told him he needed to come clean with his wife.
That's enough.
John didn't want to tell his wife. In July of 1994, we got a call from John's wife about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. His wife had said that he had hurt someone and he was going to end his life. I was totally freaked out. I remember going and getting in the car and going to look for John. There was something very strange going on. And at that time, there was a report of Vicky Sue Wall had been missing. So we were putting 2 and 2 together and was wondering if John had anything to do with that. The police went out there and they found John. So it turns out that there was a surveillance tape and it showed John pulling up to Vicky's car. And she got out and got in the truck and they drove away. The tape never showed John coming back and dropping her off. When they found her, they identified her with dental records because it was so hot that the body had decomposed. John was arrested for Vicky Sue Wall's murder. I went to visit John in prison to get his side of the story. He told me that Vicky was into strangulation and rough sex. He would pick up Vicky in the parking lot of a department store and they would go out back and they would have sex. And after they were done, she had slumped over in the seat. And when he tried to move her, there was no response. And that he was very scared. He didn't know what to do. After John dumped the body in the woods, then he had went home and confessed to his wife about his affair. He also told her what he had done. My response was, "Why didn't you take her to the hospital?" And his response was he was too scared. I do remember thinking, another story. Here's another story. He's making excuses because people just don't fall over dead. I tried to talk myself into believing it was an accident. But in the back of my mind, I didn't know whether it was or wasn't. Looking back, I wonder if John's story is even true. It's so far out there, it's just unbelievable. He could have just killed her. And then in May of 95, John was convicted of murder and sentenced to 12 years in prison. While John was in prison, his wife divorced him. He became a minister and had told me that he had given himself to Christ. He assured me that his past was behind him. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm just that way. So if he said he was changed and that's what he wanted to do was go to Christ, who was I to say he didn't? John came to live with us, and he tried to find multiple churches to minister, but because of his background, he didn't have any luck with that. I remember him dating online, and that's when he met Sally. She was a very, very nice lady. Funny, fun to talk to. She told me that she absolutely adored him and loved him. And I was pretty happy about that because John loved her. I asked him, I said, "Does Sally know about your past?" And he said yes. Then I went to Sally and asked Sally if she knew of John's past.
He gave you all the gory detail?
And she said yes. I did wonder what she really did know. There was an opening for a minister at her church. The church took him in, they welcomed him in. He decided to move up there. And John was very happy. As time went on, John and Sally became engaged. Sally had a daughter of her own, and her name was Rebecca. She was a very beautiful girl. She was funny. She was nice. John was excited about Rebecca becoming his stepdaughter. They were growing close. John moved into a trailer park, and Rebecca lived in the same trailer park. Rebecca had a young son, and John talked very highly of him and doing things with him. With John and Rebecca, the relationship that they formed was a father-daughter relationship. John was sick. He came down with a really bad cold. And since Rebecca lived in the same trailer park, she would take him soup, check on him, bring pizza over. And on the other hand, when Rebecca would have to go to work, John would come and take her son, take him to daycare, whatever she asked him to do. They kind of just helped each other out. But there was a time that John had called me and seemed to be a little bit upset. Rebecca had promised to have pizza and movie night, and she had backed out on John.
She's got some damn nerve.
Rebecca stood John up that night to get together with her baby's father. I believe that they were going to try to make amends. He was like, "I can't believe she did that after all I've done for her. I have done so much for her. I can't believe that she would stand me up like that." And he would repeat himself. John was going on and on about it, and I just thought that it was a little bit ridiculous to be going on that much about it.
I gotta go.
After John and I hung up the phone, I really didn't think too much of it. In hindsight, I think that he was becoming obsessed with her at that point. As I look back, obviously, John had sinister thoughts about his stepdaughter. On October 30th, I received a phone call from John, and he told me that Rebecca was missing. John had told me that he was supposed to pick up her son and take him to a Halloween party. But when he went to pick him up, Rebecca was nowhere to be found. John told me that he had called the police and everybody was out searching for her. I had just that little bit of hope that maybe she was with her other friends. I wanted that so bad, so bad. Mothers just don't leave their small children by themselves. I felt that something was wrong there, that John had done something. I just got a horrible sinking feeling. A day or so after I had that conversation with John, I received a call from Sally. She seemed very upset. She had told me that they had found Rebecca and that she had been murdered. She also told me that John had called her from the police station. He told her that he loved her and that he was the one that murdered Rebecca. And we just cried. It makes me angry at John. It makes me hate him. It makes me feel horrible for what Rebecca went through. That right there breaks my heart.
The crime scene tape at Rebecca Gay's mobile home was already there with the other Halloween decorations. At an afternoon press conference, police detailed John White's confession. First, they say, early Halloween morning, White went through an unlocked door at Gay's home and saw her in the hallway. He told police he wanted to act out a fantasy of killing a woman and having sex with her dead body. The suspect...
No. Can't do that. I can't do that. Nope. I know what he did to Rebecca. I know. And I don't want to watch it. I don't. Sorry, I don't. He walked into her trailer and hit her on the head with a mallet, and he had sex with her dead body, and he threw it in the ditch. And yeah, I've been there. It's not a good place for me. I'm sorry. What he did to her is unforgivable. When I turned on the news, I saw John. Confessing to the murder of Rebecca. I remember feeling anger and being appalled.
This morning, I deleted these downloads I had, and they were called Psycho Thriller. They're movies of guys, strangling women and basically raping them after they strangle. When I drink, that's what I want to do. And I had drank 5 beers, and I remember walking across the lawn. I opened her back door, and I went in, and That's when I had the rubber mallet in my hand. And she came down the hallway because she heard the door open and close. And she looked out back. I hit her with the mallet. I don't know how many times.
I just couldn't believe it. I was shocked. Everybody was shocked. It's evil that does that.
I know that I am a terrible monster. I know I need to be in a cage.
John was convicted of murder and 56 years in prison. He deserved a lot more than that. He deserved to die. When I look at this picture, I see John White, a serial killer. This isn't my brother. I always gave him the benefit of the doubt. I couldn't imagine the things that he had done. For me to talk about John and to talk about what he has done was sort of a weight off my shoulders. But the picture of Rebecca, it hurts my heart. It breaks. This is a letter that I received after John was in jail for the murder of Rebecca. Dear Chrissy, I want to tell you how much I miss you. I love you dearly, Chrissy. And I do understand how pissed off at me you must be. I know what a disappointment I am to so many people, and I'm so sorry. That's the first time I've heard John ever say that, and I don't believe it. I feel that he's sorry that he got caught. Not that he's truly sorry. I'm hoping someday we can talk. Maybe tell you what really happened. He's just telling another story. And he wants to talk to me because he wants to try to get me to believe that what he did, there was a reason for it. But there was not a story he could tell me to make it sound like it was somebody else's fault. But I never answered. I didn't want to answer. John called me every day, sometimes twice a day. But I never accepted any of the calls. Nobody was in John's corner anymore. I was there for him. He was family. I backed him. I believed in him. I had to admit that I was wrong to myself and realized that there was a dark, evil side to John that I see now versus I couldn't see then. Telling my story has been emotionally exhausting, but it's also a relief. This whole experience has helped me more than what you realize because I can talk about him versus just keeping it all in. He very much betrayed me and his family. I just knew what it was. I just knew before I even picked up that phone or answered it. The officer proceeded to tell me that John had committed suicide. He had hung himself. The brother I knew and loved had died a long time ago. So I did cry for him, but I had, I don't know what the word is, detached myself from him. He was no longer the John I knew. I remember thinking that in hell is where he deserves to be. That was the only way to kill the evil. John had a